Hey, welcome back to Striving Artist. I'm your host, Arlene. I'm so thrilled to be here in Mississauga with one of my good friends. He is a singer-songwriter, musician, guitar extraordinaire. He runs a whole bunch of open mics here in the city. I'm pleased to introduce to you guys Matt Zaddy.
Hi.
Thank you for being here with me.
Happy to do this. This is going to be fun.
Thank you for allowing us to come and hang out with you for a little bit today.
Sure, yeah.
So part of this show is mainly to talk about how us as an artist, how we make a living off of what we do. Can you talk about your transition from going to a full-time job that had nothing to do with music to now doing music full-time?
Sure. My transition was a little bit different. I find that most people's in music is a little, it kind of has a similar storyline, but how I did it in my case was very different. It was around 2011 and I recently ended a band I was in for roughly 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea what I wanted to do musically. I was playing like death metal, for lack of a better explanation. Yeah. And I remember I had just ended that band and I was working full-time as a paralegal. I was fighting people's traffic tickets.
Cool.
So yeah, right? So I was hosting the odd open mic in Streetsville, Mississauga, once a month, rotating between 2 or 3 other guys. Joel Martin was one of them, who's still doing it. And that bar shut down. So I had a friend of mine say to me, he's like, hey, you know, if you want to keep doing that open mic thing, I know someone who owns the bar down the street, why don't you go talk to them? So I went over to Collins in Streetsville and I talked to the owners and I told them what I was doing and they said, okay, let's give it a go. And it was kind of an anomaly because it did really, really well right off the bat. Like it had like 85 to 90 people the first night on Tuesday. Made no sense. Yeah, like no sense.
On a Tuesday.
On a Tuesday, exactly. So what we ended up doing was that became a weekly event that I was doing. And I was not really, at this point, even looking for work. I was just performing there as part of being the host, and I brought the gear, and I started getting referral work out of performing just at this one place.
Cool.
There was a couple of guys I knew who are now in my band, one of whom produced my last album, who were playing with somebody who was reasonably unreliable, and he kept canceling on them at the last minute. So they asked me to fill in one night, and we had amazing chemistry. Next thing you know, I'm playing in a trio called The Infringements.
Nice.
And we started playing this same bar. Well, people started seeing us there and either myself performing solo or performing there, and a lot of it turned into kind of a spin-off referral work. At first because I was just coming out of playing in another band, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do musically, but when I started playing a lot of these acoustic gigs, because it was kind of became this gradual building process where I started getting a lot more than I had ever thought I would for what I was doing, I started also writing a whole bunch of material that just kind of poured out of me.
Cool.
And then people were also liking that material. I also developed a reputation as a very good event host, and that turned into within a year and a half, 2 other places wanting me to host weekly events.
Wow.
So at one point, I was hosting open mics 3 times a week in 3 different locations, every Tuesday, every Wednesday, and every Thursday.
Right.
Now, you know how labor-intensive those things are, so it was exhausting.
Right.
So now I have these 3, plus now I'm starting to get weekend gigs on Fridays and Saturdays, some mostly just not a lot of original gigs at this point. This was just me doing cover gigs, just popular music, acoustic stuff. Sometimes with the trio, we do like a rock and roll R&B thing.
Right. So it sounds like it became an organic switch from full-time non-music to full-time music.
Kind of.
And it was also like, because you put yourself out there, because I think a lot of people are always waiting, you know, you get the rants online saying like, how come no one's listening to my music? Like in terms of, you know, you host all these events, would you say that, you know, getting yourself out there no matter what, like either social media or even actually live is probably the best way? What's been your experience in terms of getting your music out there?
It's been both. Using social to build a larger online following, because there is an appearance that goes along with that on top of the actual fan base. You need large numbers to make money from social hits. That's just how it works.
For sure, yeah.
But having those large social hits can afford you to get things like sponsorships and things like that. I built myself much more live at first, and then I did social. Now I'm working much more on social to build that up.
Right.
But I built a reputation as a good performer who was professional, reliable, and hardworking. And that turned into a whole bunch of spin-off gigs. Like now I play anywhere from 3 to 5 days a week live, and I'm fortunate now because I have the opportunity to pick which ones I want to do, which is something for a while I was like, just take everything, don't turn anything down, and that's a very normal kind of attitude, this because you don't know if there's always this feeling sometimes that it's going to dry up, and I was like, okay, just take absolutely everything. Now I'm a little bit more selective with what I'm choosing to do, as opposed to taking everything that comes my way.
That's cool.
Now, there was something you mentioned, though, as far as the organic process, and this thing I thought that was important to mention. I did something that you probably shouldn't do, which I would recommend other people not do. So, this was my regular day job. This was my music. I never slowed this one down. So I got up to here and was like this for 2 or 3 years, which was not a healthy thing to do. I was working 40 hours a week minimum at my day job, and then working 40 to 60 hours a week of music on top of that. And it was one of those things that as my music income grew, I should have started to bring this one down gradually so that they balanced each other out. I didn't do that at first, and I don't recommend that to anybody. If you get to a point where you're making a substantial enough money with music that's consistent, start to bring down whatever else you're doing that is non-music, because otherwise you're going to push yourself too hard, you could have a nervous breakdown, it can affect your health, lack of sleep, and the other thing is it can affect yourself as a performer. Now, for some reason, I was running really hard at the time, and I don't recall having any negative effects to my performance, but I remember when I was working, my younger brother, he and I were working together at the time, he's like, you were coming in and you were just on autopilot. It was like you were a zombie. And I actually remember when I was doing that, I lost track of days, time of day. I just was just in autopilot. And that's, you want to remember these things that you're doing because, you know, life actually matters. So I would recommend that if somebody is starting to build up musically, to start pulling down from that other day job. Now, that's not always possible for everybody. If it's a full-time job, not everyone's going to let you go down to part-time. So you have to build your own exit strategy. I had to do that because I wasn't just an employee. I was a partner in a firm. So I brought myself down from 5 days a week to 4 days a week first for a month or two. Then I brought it down from 4 days a week to 3 days a week. And eventually I built in an exit strategy to replace myself.
So that's cool.
Yeah, it worked. Like, it is possible. I should have done it a lot sooner.
That's okay. You did what you had to do. I just want to touch on a lot of the interviews I have. I want to talk about adversity because there's a lot of artists out there that, you know, one person said something negative about them which changed their direction to go. Like, there's a lot of people that wish they were artists, but they have that one person in their life that said they shouldn't do it. Is there a time in your life where you came across that? Obviously, you didn't let that affect you.
Most of my life, people told me to treat music as something to do on the side, never as something to do as a vocation or a career. I came to the realization that I wanted it to be a career relatively young. Like, I had one of those epiphany moments, which I know is not that common. I don't know what your experience was with that, but I had an actual moment where I was in the middle of a performance and all of a sudden everything just made sense and I knew this is what I wanted to do. Now, I spent 10 years playing a style of music which was incredibly niche and very, very difficult to make a living in. So I basically took adversity head on. No one would book our own tours, so we had to do it ourselves. I had to learn how to get visas by myself through the US. I co-booked one US tour, one other one I was put on, which was very fortunate. I had an incredible amount of adversity. Can I tell that story I was telling?
Yes, please.
Okay. So this band I was in, we had we had a graphic designer for a drummer. So we said, cool, we're going to make these super fancy press kits and send them our best demo at the time. We sent out 100 kits to 100 record labels across the world that do our kind of music. Because there's lots of labels out there if you look for them.
For sure.
We heard back from 3 of 100, and all of them were no.
Oh, wow.
So that was 97 didn't even reply. And 3 said no. So, you know, if we took that as a sign as to what we should have done, we would have stopped right there. But the label, we ended up signing to a label with our next record, and that label didn't even reply to us. And I remember I was talking to the A&R guy about this. He's like, hey, I found that little demo you sent me. I'm like, man, you never even replied to us. That was like soul crushing. And he said, it just wasn't ready.
Right.
And you got to understand that a lot of the time we're only looking at this from our perspective. Most people that are on the music business side of things are just as inundated as we are.
For sure, yeah.
They get so much material that they can't go through everything. Or if it doesn't catch them right away, they're like, it's not there yet.
That's actually a great lesson, because that record label actually signed you.
Yeah.
Even though they didn't respond to you. It was persistence that I think is a big thing.
Yeah, and when I
us
actually did
as
start
well.
dealing with them, I talked to them for a year before we inked anything. Like, it was a long-term relationship. Like, I'm not dealing with them anymore because I don't play that kind of music, but I'm still friends with the guys on the label because we built a real relationship.
Sweet.
So when I look at adversity now with what I'm doing, like, this is the example I like to give in what I'm doing now is everyone who does what you do or what I do applies to a whole bunch of festivals.
Right.
If I get 10% of what I apply to, that's a lot. Like, I applied to probably 50 to 75 festivals this year, and I got on maybe 5 to 10. And that's not bad. That's actually
great.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Most people I know that try to get on festivals, it is a very difficult process if you don't have a really good booker. It's
Exactly.
A lot of it is relationship building.
For sure, yeah, definitely.
If every little thing we've done has brought us to this moment, I think then we're all doing something right. Despite the sticks and stones and broken bones and broken hearts we've loved, I'm still here with you tonight. A taste of all the pain and
I wanted you to talk about your music and what it represents to you, or what you're representing now, singer-songwriter, because you did go from death metal to this awesome acoustic, like John Mayer-ish, Jack Johnson kind of vibe thing, at least in my opinion.
Sure.
So
yeah, I always find it
music.
interesting what other people hear in my sound, because I've one thing that I get a lot is people say that my vocal inflections are really similar to Rob Thomas.
Yes.
See, there it is.
Okay.
Yeah, and I never heard it, but I had my producer say that. I had 3 or 4 other people like, I was playing a show one time at this venue in London. He's like, you sound a lot like Rob Thomas. I'm like, again with the Rob Thomas. Not that I mind. I mean, if I do half as well as him, I'm doing just fine.
Right, for sure.
So my music now is like a blend of folk rock and rhythm and blues. Some songs are more folky, some songs are more rhythm and bluesy. John Mayer does do that as well, so I totally get that comparison, and I take that as the highest compliment.
Awesome. Now, just based on like your experience, you know, you've been in the music industry for quite a long time. Did you find that this is the most like comfortable where you, in not in terms of like complacent, but more like this is where your voice is today, or like this is where your music is sitting in your life? Is that how?
I think that's a fair way to say it. Yeah, like, I mean, I'm only doing this kind of music because it felt right. Like I said, I came from playing a very, very different style of music, which I was utterly obsessed with for a long time, and still am. I am a diehard metalhead. But when I started playing this stuff, this was an organic process that brought me to it. I just had these songs just sort of pour out of me. And the response to it was very positive, and I couldn't ignore that. It's one of those things that if I can say to anybody, if you're doing something and you have a few things that you're good at, and one of them is more liked than the rest of them, that's probably going to be a good income source. There's no problem with exploring that. Like, you can still do other things. Like, there's a lot of guys that played heavy music that do what I do. Like, look at City in Color.
Exactly. But even when you perform your original music, it just seems like it fits. Like you present it very well.
I am more myself doing that than I am
100%,
anywhere else.
Like I still want to have my punk band, like my
don't worry,
punk band.
Like
but like my voice is obviously a singer-songwriter kind of thing. So I know what you mean about that. But you've got some exciting news coming up.
Yeah, I have a new record coming out that I've been working on for the last year and a half, so that'll be out in September, and I'm super excited about that. I honestly feel it's the best thing I've ever done, so it feels great. It'll be on all of those fancy streaming platforms, but I still have CDs as well. Yeah,
you know what? A lot of people, they're going back to even vinyl and cassette tapes.
100%. Yeah, I've seen the cassette tape wave. I'm like, ooh, except I don't have a cassette tape player anymore.
So for your journey towards your album, how different was it from your last album that you created?
Sure. This record, the first record that I did, I worked with a friend of mine who used to play in my band, my friend Jason Cavanaugh, wonderful producer, and his process was a little different than the producer I worked with this time. I wouldn't say better or worse, but just different. When I sat down with the guy I worked with this time, his name is Ross Citrullo, Ross was really, really pushing me to make these songs the best that they could possibly be. He would throw ideas at me, talk about changing song structure. I'm a very wordy lyricist. I write far too many lyrics that then will fit in a song. And
like in a bar, I'll fit like 20 words in there.
That's it, yeah. So the problem that I had was some of these songs I had written and had just kind of sitting for a few years. So I was like used to the structure and I was emotionally invested in those lyrics. He's like, that's great, I'll just sing half of that. And I'm like, no! So some of the songs I cut out substantial parts because it's one of those things that like the number one thing that I always want to do with my music, and sometimes it takes the kick from the right producer, is serve the song.
For sure.
It has to be about the song. The lyrics are a component of something. It's not strictly just prose or poetry. It's part poetry. It's part of something. So he really... he and I got into a really good groove where we were literally finishing each other's sentences.
Oh, that's cool.
And we would have the same ideas for things almost at the same time. So I knew I was working with the right guy because we just got so in sync musically on the ideas that it worked out really well. I also worked with a number of different performers. Like my regular band played on it a lot, but with scheduling conflicts and me trying to meet deadlines, I ended up getting a handful of session guys to play drums and bass. One thing that I really liked that I did with this record was I really expanded the vocal arrangement. So there's 3-part harmonies across the album, which to me just makes my heart sing.
That's
like,
awesome.
I'm a big fan of 3-part or 4-part or 5-part vocal harmony arrangements. Like I love I'm a huge Stan Rogers fan. Like if you don't know anyone who doesn't know who he is, he's very, I guess, the best sound. He personifies the East Coast of Canada in his music better than anyone I've ever seen.
That's awesome.
And so I do as much harmony while still serving the song.
For sure, yeah, definitely.
Because I was going to say, if it didn't suit it, it shouldn't be there.
Definitely.
And Ross, working with Ross this time, he pushed me to be so much better than I was.
Right. And I think that's important with the producer, especially to know that you can get along with that person that's going to be putting on your music for all eternity.
Of course.
Which I think you guys should make sure you check your album out, coming out in 2019. Make sure you guys check them out online. We're very excited to see what you've got in store.
Thank you.
For the future,
you can find everything. Like if you just Google Matt Zaddy, so Matt and then Zaddy spelled like daddy, but with a Z.
Any way to get your name out there. Anyway, thank you so much, Zaddy, for chatting with me about your music and your career. We hope that you inspired other striving artists out there as well.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm very excited. I've got something special lined up for you guys. Stay tuned.
Ew.